Oh yeah, we're doing this all live as we normally do. Welcome everybody to the Six Pixels Under podcast. But for some reason on my current browser share, I have to refresh it every stream. Maybe somebody in the chat knows why that is. But let me go ahead and spam this out on the outlets so I can get people here talking. Because today I want to talk about New World. Okay, image. And spam this out. Whoops. Sorry. Echo, echo, echo. Uh, okay. Oh, I think just because people normally do desktop share. That's probably what it is. I was muted in Discord, my bad. But I have card in the back. Everybody, as you trickle in, because we're gonna be
Yep.
talking about New World and probably some other things too. But I didn't really want to stream that much today. But to be honest, this New World news came out, and there's just been so much like crap about it. So I'm glad you saw that, Fluff Master, because when all of my friends see that, they always laugh about it. They're always like, "What the fuck? Why do you have so many emails?" And I'm like, I know it sounds like it's because I'm popular, but it's more like because that email account was an adapted email account that I probably made, and I'm sure Card's story is similar. I probably made that account back in like 2002, like so it's ancient. Like my email's old as fuck.
Oh yeah. I mean, my original Gmail account dates back from when you needed to get invited to be allowed to make a Gmail account.
Yeah, I had a couple different emails. I had a Hotmail, of course,
Oh yeah.
AOLs.
I
Um,
had a Hotmail, but that one they delete your stuff if you don't use it.
yeah,
So I think after some point that one just faded away.
mine would always get hacked for some reason.
Oh, shitty password.
No, I think it was just like maybe got some type of leak and I just never changed whatever info was on it or something because that happens to my like old PlayStation account. It got hacked. My old PlayStation account I never touched. Apparently this was a
Oh,
thing that people did and I don't know how they did it, but
yeah. The only account I ever had hacked was for my music streaming service. And that's because I actually used a compromised password, which I like sort of knew, but I was just too lazy to change it. So they got in, I contacted support, and within like 30 minutes I was back in. And they were like, please update your password to one that's not compromised. It's like, yes, I will.
all right, let's just jump into the covering the news blurb, everybody.
Yeah.
In case I doubt any of you here that are here early missed the news, right? Like, I mean, if y'all are here in the stream early, it's either just random luck or chance that you found me, or you came here because you know that's what we're gonna talk about. Um, as we see in chat, we have New World shut down because it was woke. Nice. Bro Bomba, Death of a Game, New World Part 2. Um, and then Card says New World, Old Mistakes. So, news came out today, or I guess it was yesterday, but it was like later in the day, so I didn't even find out about it until that night as I was going to sleep, which was there's a big update, not just on New World actually or Amazon Game Studios, but actually rather I should say not just on New World's team, but on Amazon Game Studios as a whole. Could you actually pull that up for me, card in the background? How much did they end up laying off? Because I know they
Uh,
laid off the
14,000, I believe, Bloomberg reported were on the line to be laid off. So I
yeah.
don't think it's officially confirmed yet,
Okay.
but that's the number they're looking at. So like in essence, it just comes down to they're just shuttering, I think, their entire games division and
I
everything related to it.
That's what I was told by people who either work with people at in Irvine or know people in Irvine, which is the studio I visited. That entire studio was shuttered, and that was their New World studio. So
Yeah. But keep in mind, they also have the Lumberyard engine side of things,
mhm.
which of course they tried to get into that. That's also what they used for New World, and I'm not sure if they will use it for any of their other titles. So I guess they will have to maintain some level of support for that. Or alternatively, if they really want to get fully out of it, I guess they could hand it over, maybe sell it for a token price to CIG, because they are the ones that are, I think, the only external customer right now that really uses it.
Yeah, and just all right, let's just get through this press release too, because basically the reason why we started talking about that, everybody, for those who didn't connect it, is that the news came out the day before. So meaning that the big Amazon layoffs happened the day before this happened. So this has all been happening in the span of literally like days.
Yeah.
So as the article reads, this is on their website directly, newworld.com, an update on New World. As New World recognizes its 4th anniversary since launching on PC, we reflect on a blah 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 journey, blah 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 blah, passion, 4 years of steady content updates and a major new console release. That sounds like a little self-congratulatory, but I get it. And then it says
True.
here, the next paragraph, the recently launched Season 10 and Nighthaven update, which was, I think, the most recent. I guess you could call it an expansion. I don't know if that was what it was fully being called, but let's just call it a major update, as expansions are also called for some reason. But will serve as the final content release for New World on PC and consoles. It is only after much consideration that we've reached this decision. To thank you, the New World community, for your support over the years, we've made Nighthaven release available to you for free. This is after making I believe the other one's called Anger of the like Earth or so. It's like Wild Anger of the Earth or something like that. The previous expansion. Could you look that up for me, Card?
I
That
think right now is you can't even buy it anymore.
Oh, that's right. So you would just be looking up wiki pages because there's no current add-on pages that you can actually access. But oh, Rise of the Angry Earth. It says it actually here at the bottom. So they made Rise of the Angry Earth free first, and that was actually something they did like the last month, or I think like a couple of weeks ago. And then they made Nighthaven free. But now this comes off the fact that they're announcing that the game is essentially being put into maintenance mode.
By the sounds of it, maintenance mode for next year, and I think what they're trying to do is to see if they can pawn it off to like a smaller studio to like maybe keep it operational in some way, or alternatively, it's just going to be shuttered completely.
Yeah,
Because if they're
that's what
laying
it says
off
here.
all so much stuff and pretty much shuttering their studios, it doesn't make sense to keep a couple of people working internally within Amazon to keep a game alive.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that would make the most sense for them, even like financially at this point, would be to just like offload this to one of those studios that handles like smaller games that are essentially on maintenance mode, like UO,
Yeah,
Stonehenge Studios, or whoever's in charge of Lord of the Rings Online. These different companies already have experience running MMOs and virtual worlds with skeleton crews.
yeah. Deca, I believe, runs STO, for example. The
Hmm.
companies like that. Yeah,
Yeah, like so that's those places would be like, something. And I'm sure they actually would try to approach New World. Of course, there's more money hungry companies that also do a bit of preservation that would also approach them, like Amigo. So maybe we will see New World in some sort of like sense, but I think Card put it best, which is that we only basically have their word that it's going to last for another year. We don't know that. It was Rose of the Angry Earth. Okay, you said Rise, and then you said Rise. I love how literally all of us spelled it wrong.
We're amazing.
Rise of the Angry Earth. Okay, which is actually a kind of a cool name, in a sense. I like it. I think Blue Day was trolling. No, I think so too, Trinical. Before we got on stream, Carter and I were joking about it. But anyway. Oh, it's because someone responded said, how New World was woke. Oh, okay. Gotcha. New World was woke.
The more I learn.
But anyway. So they made Rise of the Angry Earth free, and this got people really kind of excited. For example, I was seeing talks that were saying like the game's in the best state that it's in, basically. And honestly, when you look at the most recent population data, according to Steam charts, that does seem to be true, right?
It has, like, if you look at the charts, the current latest like release thingy does seem to have peaked slightly higher than the previous one from last year, but it looks like it's already dropping faster than that one from last year.
Yeah, and so that's actually something that I wanted to cover more in depth anyway, is the concept of population dropping and population gaining. But real quick, I want to focus on kind of like the current numbers. So I saw on Steam people were saying, well, I guess that would have been on Reddit because on Steam people were playing it, my bad. But on Reddit they were talking about how it has a 35,000 player peak count. And some were debating, is that good, is that bad? Let me first go into like, is it good or bad? And how I can arrive at that decision. And I think this is really key, because this is something that I just posted about this on Twitter. It's a bit of an issue I've noticed, is like, I really think that virtual world and MMORPG education has gone up like tremendously, and I'm sure Card would agree. Is like, we see people more educated join the Discord. We see more educated people join discussions. We also just see on Reddit, even without like any influence from me directly necessarily, people starting to question, is this game an MMO? And, you know, things like that, where it was like, before that was a bit like, you kind of got shut down for ever trying to do that stuff.
Before it was like, they say it's MMO, so it is MMO.
Exactly. And now you see that debate happening all the time. So there's definitely been a shift in education, and like the player base has gotten smarter. But it's like, I talked to Raph Coster about this, of course, one of the pioneers in the virtual world gaming industry. And I was like, they definitely have gotten smarter. And he's like, yeah, for sure. But then I like was like very like negative about it, I'll admit. And I said something along the lines of like, but how do I get them smarter? And I'll never forget the advice he gave me. And I actually have told Card this already personally, which is that he told me, look, if you really love something, you have to find a way to make other people love it, you know. And that sometimes that means just showing them a little part of it. Oh, look at this. You could do this little part. And people are like, wow, that's so cool. Maybe you don't need to overwhelm them with, did you know that if roaming AI could get stronger and loot, you know, objects, they could suddenly start challenging players? Like, if you go that deep into things, like, you might overwhelm players. So, you know, his basic advice was just, look, translate your love into education and into bringing people along with you on that journey and on your love for this kind of, you know, genre. And this is a really complex genre. This is the hardest type of game to make, without a doubt.
Question about it.
Yeah, and I've never seen any developers even debate that. It's just one of those things that people just kind of accept because it's just true. But let's go back to kind of like the recent numbers, this 35,000 number. So how do you determine like if numbers are good or bad? Well, scale is designed and essentially figured out before development ever begins, and it should. And what I mean by that is that, and Card can fill in the blanks here a little bit too when I'm finished, is that Basically, if I design a game that isn't supposed to be entirely massive and doesn't require thousands and thousands of players to function in it, then I don't need thousands and thousands of players because I didn't design
Yep.
my world for it. So even if I have thousands and thousands of players playing my game, I either just make more servers, clone instances, or find other ways for people to essentially repeat the same sort of experience to appeal to more of them, even if they can't all experience these worlds at the same time because they're not actually massive.
It's pretty much how you run with it. It's like if you design a game that is relatively small scale, as long as you have enough people to fill the small scale or the small sandbox, it will function. But if you design your game that is like, okay, this game needs a minimum of 1,000 players active at any given time, or it will fail, then yeah, if you only have 500 people, you're in problems,
Yep.
trouble.
Yeah, and great examples of this, of course, are one of my favorite MMOs of all time, uh, Darkfall Online. Darkfall Online had this massive map, huge map, bigger than Skyrim, so on and so forth. And it sounds awesome, and it was awesome when there was enough players to populate the map. When there wasn't, you spent 30 minutes at a time because of how big the map was, running around and never encountering anybody. So, in a sense, the scale of that game, like Card is saying, made it to where they had to have thousands of players playing concurrently, not just playing the game, but playing at the same time. So you could actually run around and actually have like these emergent encounters that you want in a big sandbox, open world MMO. And so to connect this to New World, most people here are familiar with New World's early design if they haven't heard me talk about it either in my video about it or just on stream before or didn't experience it themselves. New World's early design was really pretty much trying to be a survival game MMO. It was trying to be the first one because there's been some that have like attempted it. Atlas, Dune, Awakening. Is it Awakening? Is that what the second part of the?
Yeah, Dune Awakening is right now
Yeah,
the current one.
you have some other ones that have kind of like attempted aspects of it, but Amazon, when I was behind closed doors with them, didn't seem like they were trying to meet in the middle. They were trying to make an actual massive MMO with survival game aspects. As this was sold to us, it was incredibly innovative. This has never been done before. We've never seen a survival game at this scale. And of course, seeing them do it with such a big, company backing them, Amazon, behind Amazon Game Studios, using the Lumberyard engine, like Hard was talking about earlier. And we thought, oh, wow, if anyone could do it, they could do it. What was showed to us early on was a very, 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 very rough showcase of that. When I say rough showcase, demos can still be fun. And I'm not talking about a demo released to the public. I'm talking about a demo released behind closed doors. Meaning that demos and vertical slices can still actually be relatively fun. Because that's the point. They're supposed to communicate the basic idea of what is the point
You
of
can
this.
have you can have a white box stage demo and have a shit ton of fun with it. If
Hmm.
it's a really good, well designed game.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look at like the early testings of games like I think the best examples are actually the ones that I've just covered recently. And I'm covering now is Killing Floor. Killing Floor used to be a mod on Unreal Tournament. And that mod immediately became a massively successful standalone game after it released, just like DayZ did. And there's so many more examples of this where you have these games that might start as like simple mods, simple like demos, maybe even just they changed like a little bit of the game like DayZ did at first. And then they become their own thing completely because gaming is fucking so complex and online gaming is even more broad in the sense that there's just so many different branches you can take with these things. So New World wanted to take this branch, like the name kind of implies, of being this colonizing, encountering magic kind of dilemma. And it was unique. It was a cool premise. And it went along with the concept of what the game was, which is what the game was when I played it, was a survival game. You could build settlements. these settlements would actually grow in size and eventually become powerful enough to become cities and influence more, and so on and so forth. The issues that they were having, as far as I remember it and could encounter when I was playing it, though, was that they just didn't have the experience from survival game developers. They didn't have any survival game developers or any super survival game like fans on the team that I encountered or were aware of. They had some content creators they were working with that, like, I think I've told you this before, Card, but basically, like, the best Rust players were heavily involved in early New World. The reason why you saw none of them end up playing the game is because they didn't end up making the game for them anymore. They switched the game.
I mean, it became entirely team part focused. That went the whole other direction.
I remember talking to literally like the leader of the office at Amazon Game Studios, and he was we were just like kind of nerding about survival games, and I told him, I was like, yeah, you got to have some survival game guys out. And he's like, well, guess what? And I was like, what? He's like, last week we had H June. And I was like, really? They had a bunch of other like top, level Rust players. And in my group, as I've mentioned before, we had Sir Winter, who's one of the top Rust, YouTubers. So we had like tons of survival game presence there. More than people might even think or necessarily consider, especially with what game ended up being released ultimately. But that just goes to show you how much they wanted the game to be like that. The reason I'm going through the effort to explain all of this is that that's not the game that launched. Go watch my Death of a Game video for sort of why and what ended up happening exactly, but basically they ended up changing plans. Like right before launch, got cold feet, and then decided, you know what, let's not do a survival open world, like, sandbox game. Let's kind of combine that with just the more traditional, MMORPG theme park approach, right? Where content comes out, you do dungeons together, you level up, you get better gear, you do raids, so on and so forth. And maybe there's some open world bosses every now and then and stuff. Well, as Card and I talked about way back then, the reason that didn't work was because they did it literally at the last second, and then suddenly had 9 months to come up with content that took other developers years to come up with. And even the biggest developers, it takes them years. People think of WoW and Final Fantasy XIV as always having these expansions coming out. That's true, but look at the amount of years in between them.
There's a lot of time.
It's usually 2 to 3 years. So it's like,
Yeah.
think about that. If you're suddenly changing gears last second to adopt this content model that already was supposed to be 2-3 years in the bank in terms of time spent to finish it, you're in the hole. So that means that either they would have had to hire an insane amount of people, which almost wouldn't really even solve the problem anyway, because they would be
Would not
inexperienced.
have worked.
Yeah, they were inexperienced. They didn't have the level of expertise to teach those people properly, to get them to actually be useful on the workforce. So essentially, they were in an impossible situation. Now, what sort of became very frustrating, and this is an issue of kind of what I'm talking about with the education of the MMORPG industry, is that, and Card, I'm sure you remember this, is that people started debating, oh, you guys are just mad because it's not a PvP gank box anymore. That became kind of like
Yeah.
the rallying cry, when it was like, Card and I have, especially me having alpha tested the game, we've been complaining about that since that shit was implemented, because we know it doesn't work. Because we both come from PvP-centric games. Him being a longtime Eve player, and of course, like I said, I'm a Darkfall player, and also play Dark Eden and Ultima.
Yeah.
Yeah, we knew those systems wouldn't work because those systems didn't work 20 years ago. And that sounds like an exaggeration, but I'm not exaggerating. Eve came out, guys, 2 years ago or something ridiculous. Eve is old as shit. Like, people don't realize how old that game is. But it's one of the older MMOs, literally.
Yeah.
That's still running at the level that it's running.
Eve ran because they started it small. They had this idea and they just slowly worked with it. And it allows you to grow an organic audience that can play with those tools and understands those tools and accepts those tools. But if you don't give if you don't want to attract that kind of an audience, and you're just going all in and you go like this and you put in a lot of the gang box stuff, yeah, it's never going to end well. I mean, it wouldn't have worked for New World. It didn't work in the end the way that it did anyway. It's not working for June either.
Yeah, and let's just talk about real quick the design aspects of why New World was almost an impossible task to begin with. Which I feel like I didn't talk about that enough in my video, but I feel like it's easy for us to talk about because we know what they were trying to initially accomplish, which really was, like they were saying to us, you know, and to me behind closed doors, which was like they wanted to make a survival MMO where the players were able to really affect the world and stuff like that. The problem with that, and this is the problem with most hybrid type, you know, games, is that you have to be really good at making both of those games.
And that's two tricky games to make,
Yep.
especially because you're trying to combine that survival game aspect with an MMO. But if you look at something that pretty much all of these survival games do, which is a fairly big constant in them, it is the wipe cycle. So it's either a week, a month, or whatever, and even with extraction shooters, you see it. It is this constant cycle where everybody's being brought back down to zero. But an MMO, on the other hand, is a persistent world where you don't everything to be persistent. So you're trying to combine mechanics that are designed almost for this constant life cycle because otherwise people just kind of snowball out of control, and you try to put that into a persistent environment. But it is a really tricky combination to do, and if you're going to do that, it would require a lot of experience, but it also requires understanding how are you going to deal with that aspect. How are you going to make sure that there's a constant drain on people, that you're not going to get these snowball effects.
Yeah, and I think that like something that you and I love to do is talk about Mass Effects, and I found an easy way to insert them into this conversation, which is that the beauty of Mass Effect for gamers like us specifically, who both like shooters and RPGs, because both Card and I, you know, play both of these types of games, is that Mass Effect was like, let's find a way to make these intersect, right? And it sounds so
Yep.
simple now, especially because the game was out way back then and whatever else, but really back then, and I'm telling you, you know, and Card can speak for himself too, this was novel for us to see an RPG that was actually a shooter. This was actually novel. Like, we weren't
And
used to encountering that yet.
no, and like a lot of people, like maybe haven't played Mass Effect 1 and only played the later ones. Like the later ones turned more shooter, but the first one
Exactly.
was really RPG, where it went so far that if you were smart with how you build things, like I ran around with a sniper rifle that did more damage than the main gun on the Mako, which is a very RPG sort of thing to have happen. But it also shows you this issue that you can have when you're combining these different types of genres, where
Hmm.
people will use, and some would argue abuse, the mechanics of both of these genres combined. And that creates a whole new level of complexity that you're going to have to deal with. And also, most importantly, as a developer, you have to predict this.
Hmm.
And that's why it's so important, like you mentioned, is having those people that play these games a lot on a high level in your team is very critical, because they will tell you how they will abuse and use these systems so
There's
that you
no
can then
theoreticalness needing to
understand it.
happen with those players. You're absolutely right. It's why
Yeah.
you need those kinds of players on your team, and developers on your team, because there's no theoretical nonsense that happens with them. They can literally just straight tell you that's not possible.
Yeah. I mean, there's like we're talking New World, but like I recently jumped back into June Awakening a bit for a friend, and a lot of people have been wondering what went wrong with that game, and it's just like, well, I don't know why anybody was surprised, let alone the company that made them, because you sort of made these games before, but like you create this, and people are going to be playing it exactly in the way that a player like myself or you or anybody else that played a lot of these PvP games and survival games would tell you they were going to play. Like there is should not be a surprise, but it will be a surprise if you don't understand what you're making.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
that requires having those people on board.
Yeah, and even I loved how you mentioned having to have the level of mastery over both of the games because I think that people might think that, yeah, but aren't MMOs more complex? So then, therefore, if you're just good at them, then you can figure out survival games. Well, here's the thing that's a bit of a
No.
wrench to things. When I was talking to Raf Koster, of course, creator of Ultima Online, Galaxies, and now working on Stars Reach, he literally told me that survival games are virtual worlds if they have a persistent map, meaning that he doesn't believe that wiping your map means that you're an MMO anymore. He doesn't he thinks that that disqualifies you as a virtual world.
Yes.
And I agree. Obviously, my
Yep.
opinion a little bit smaller than his, but I also agree because logically it makes sense. He's saying, look, if the life is terminating, the world's no longer functioning, it's not a world anymore. So,
No.
and yes, most of these games online are not these days, are becoming more game-like in some ways, like the offline MMOs and the online ones that barely have you interact with people. Like, I get that, but that's not necessarily what we want as the only future for the industry, of course. Like, we want those to exist. Even we want like introductory, like a great way to put it. We want introductory anime. We want introductory K-pop to exist. I'll be honest with you guys. I don't like introductory K-pop. I don't listen to it. Like the kind of K-pop that has a bunch of English in it. If you're wondering, that's what we call like the noob K-pop. I'm not a fan of it. And I'm an English speaker. But it's because if I'm going to listen to K-pop, I'd rather listen to them in Korean. But, for example, in K-pop Demon Hunters, here's an example of them taking a lot of the same feelings of that, but then selling it to a global audience. And look at the success they had with not just the show, but the soundtrack and the music. I get it. That stuff does work. I'm not hating on it, but I think that we're talking about K-pop there. Let's go back to virtual worlds for a second. We're not that level of popularity. We're never going to be that broadly appealing until we can create the
You,
umbrellas that attract those
yeah.
players. You know what I'm saying? We can't just make
You
one
need a
game and
different.
suddenly we're going to be as popular as fucking K-pop or
Yeah.
something.
You need different tiers of MMOs that target different sorts of audiences. So yeah, you're going to need your World of Warcrafts and your Final Fantasies, and you're going to need your EVE Onlines and your Darkfalls and things like that, and also just stuff in between that allows people to jump in between. And I think inherent with such a system also comes the need that we need to understand is like, okay, maybe we need to make an MMO that is not targeting 1 million people at launch, but that's targeting 50,000 people. We need to scale down this massive ambition to be a more manageable level. And we can start to build that more organically because,
Yeah,
let's
before
face it,
people
one of
take
the
that
other
wrong too,
reasons.
not to interrupt, but just before people misinterpret that, what Card's saying too is like to actually have a budget that's gonna last, right? Like not just being
Yeah,
like, oh shit, our game didn't work, we're gonna shut down.
no. You need, if you're going to want to make a successful long term product, you need to understand it's going to take a period of growth once it hits the market. You're most likely not going to make money from day one. That's true for a lot of things that people introduce into the market, whether it's a physical good or digital good, it doesn't really matter. You're going to need to have capital to get to the start point, and then you're going to still need capital to keep yourself operational until you have reached a growth rate where you can become self sustaining. And that's the other problem, like I said, with a lot of these games, they're being put in all of this budget, and then it's like you launched, now you have to do it all on your own. But you just build a studio with 5,000 people. The chances that your product that you're just going to launch is going to be capable of supporting 5,000 people who primarily work in, let's face it, relatively high paying jobs in high paying areas is not going to be very large, that chance. But if you went with a smaller studio with a budget where you say, like, if I go from 5,000 people to 1,000 people, but I take half of that initial budget, but I don't use it all to make the game, I just use a portion of it to make the game and then a portion to bridge so that I can work with it, probably launch it in a beta stage for much longer periods of time, work with my community, grow it, build it, rebuild it, then launch it, then continue that growth phase, and hopefully by year one or year two after launch, it's become self sustainable. That's a much more healthy approach to it. But if you're going to tell a business person, it's like you already spent 500 million, uh, and it's like, oh, the product is launched, give me my money. They see it like launching a movie. A lot of the bulk income from movies comes from that initial release weekend, release weeks. After that, it drops off a cliff. Like talking about K-pop Demon Hunters is actually one where you see it bulking the trend because it grows mouth to marketing because it's just really good. So instead of peaking, it went up and it just stayed on that line
Yeah.
for weeks after weeks after weeks.
And like you were
And
saying
that's
about the
sort of
games
what you want
too,
to
it's a
go
unique
for.
product, right? It's unique.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
it's a long term, an MMO game especially, is
Yeah.
a long term item. So you're not launching it and making all your money on launch. No, you're launching it to start the revenue generation that could last easily a decade or more, like EVE Online, that's still actively running.
hmm RuneScape as well, because RuneScape was,
Yeah,
around the same generation of Eve, and
exactly.
people don't know that, but those two games are like super, super similar in many different ways. In fact, people oftentimes argue that RuneScape is like a different version of Ultima, and people argue that Eve is Ultima in space. So it kind of, it's funny how
I mean,
those
they
games have
all,
these different paths to them, but they're so similar in some
yeah.
ways.
If you look at Ralph Kostner's latest talk, and it can be found on YouTube on that Star Street YouTube page, he talks about it because in the end, like all of these games come down to the same origin sort of point. So yeah, they all feel similar in many different ways. Because in the end, there's only so many ways that you can do make a game.
Yeah, and even to go kind of back to what we're talking about, survival versus like survival games versus MMOs, is that it's not that you can't combine these concepts together, it's that if you do, you basically have to insert so much more guardrails than you might even think
Yep.
possible. And that might confuse people because some people have very utopian fantasies, whether in real life as a libertarian or in a video game, where they feel like, hey, if I just
Um,
think the best, then the best is gonna happen here. But the sad truth is
no,
if you guys have
the
read Lord of the
worst.
Flies, Lord of the Flies is this story that's basically trying to tell you that look, if you just leave people without reason, without law, and without some sort of like incentivization system through socialization, you'll have literally whoever's the biggest stick holder. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yep.
I'm the leader, and that's not a good thing because the truth is in maybe in ancient fucking times that person was the leader, but we're not in ancient times, and most of these games aren't really trying to give that sort of vibe anyway, where it's just like the guy running around with the big stick's the leader. No, they
Like,
want to
let me
create
put
these
it this.
teamwork environments, right? Go ahead.
The fun thing is, like, a lot when you're talking about these kind of games, for a lot of people, this falls in like that sandbox category. It's like, okay, we're letting the players roam free. And then with the theme park MMOs, it's like we're making the content, you're following our content. So this is
Mhm.
like, oh, theme park is PvE, and these sandboxes, they're all PvP. Ironically, if you want to make a sandbox work like with the survival mechanics, etc., the primary focus of your game is going to have to be PvE
Yep.
because you are going to be controlling that PvE because that PvE is going to be your balancing factor for the players.
hmm
So if you see a player clan that's growing far too powerful, you can use your PvE factions to wage war on them. And because you can cheat, because you're the developer, you control the factions, you can give them whatever freaking power that you want, you can always beat them. You have to actively manage that, especially early on. Now, as the game grows older, what you will see happens is people start to understand more what they can do, how far they can go. It will start to level itself out more. So you need to do less and less intervention. But especially early on, you are going to have to be the police of your own universe because people will otherwise run free because you created a lawless sandbox. And like you said, in the lawless sandbox, the person with the biggest stick and the largest mouth is definitely going to win.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like survival games, because they are virtual worlds, basically, they're just missing a core aspect of what makes them a virtual world. But they can still qualify as them. Um, but they have a slight different aspect about them, and that's that they've, like Raph was saying to me, they are a vertical slice that is largely focused on the environmental aspects, the survival aspects. It just so
Yeah.
happens that, some of the popular survival games like fucking Rust and even Ark Survival on like main PvP servers, the main survival thing that you're fucking surviving against is the players. But
Yeah.
you'd actually be surprised that the vast majority of survival games aren't that way. They're actually about surviving against the environment, and I know because I play them. For example, Sons of The Forest, 7 Days to Die, State of Decay, Project Zomboid. These are like some of the most popular, if not the most popular, survival games, and they're all against the NPCs. And that's because, like, by doing it that way, they're putting the survival aspects more so into the party working together, right? So there's persistence, there's the ability to defend your base, maybe even like having save states and stuff like that. But those games
Ironically,
are
you're going. Sorry, but
okay.
ironically, you're going back more to the D&D background.
Well, yeah, and that's actually kind of what I'm saying is, in a weird way, is that you have to find a way to synthesize those experiences and then
Yeah.
put them into a massive container and think, okay, well, how do we make this work? Because it's not just as simple as let's just make that bigger. And I think that that's what New World sort of thought. The problem they ran into is because their game was so big and clunky in aspects of how it was made, their building systems just weren't very good. That was the problem I was running into when I was testing the game, is that the building systems felt like they were behind, Minecraft, and that game is old as shit, and other games like that, where it was just like nothing felt new or novel about it. Like Stars Reach right now has this concept where you can mine resources and then terraform. That wasn't anywhere close to what New World. New World was just literally place thing
Well,
down,
that's
hit it with blocks, and put crafting resources on it, and boom, it would be done. That was like the building in the game.
yeah. I think that's also in part due to the fact that they used that Lumberyard engine, which is of course CryEngine 3, with a different name on it, and they probably tried to change some aspects of it, but that's not a like if you want to talk about needing experts as well for like the type of game that you're making, you also need experts for the types of engine that you use, and the amount of people that are expert in CryEngine was very, very small, and quite a large number of them were already employed with another large game company, which a lot of people have many different opinions about, called CIG. Because CryEngine, of course, as a company, went largely bankrupt. So a lot of their people left. And so the couple of experts that were around already had mostly been gobbled up. And then you're trying to make a MMO in an engine that was never really designed for it, without having the experts to make those changes to make all of those kind of unique mechanics actually work.
Yeah, and Card might sound like he's making a bit of like these technical throwaway points you can hear people make sometimes, but as I've talked about before, well, first off, let me just state Card knows a lot more about Lumberyard than most, but that also Lumberyard was not just like expensive for Amazon. They paid, I think 200, like 150 million for it. It was expensive. They spent the first 3 years of development of New World just working on the engine. So I think what you said is
Yeah.
probably true, which is like they were probably working on the engine in parallel with development, and then just realized that the things that they were trying to create just really weren't feasible, and then just sort of gave up. The problem is that they waited too long to make that shift, and when they
Yeah.
did make that shift, they didn't make that shift in a very intelligent way. And what I mean by that is that you have to pick your battles. If we just made this big shift, you just be honest about that. Say, look, we're going to start the content with this. We're going to give you some medium level difficulty. We're going to give you a hard difficulty. Here's our plan for upcoming content. We're going to be dedicated to this.
But
Like,
that's where you need that additional budget for running all of that.
yep. And realizing that it's not just after things launch and then just everything's done for. It's like, no, like, you have to keep fighting in those trenches. And I never
Yep.
saw that from Amazon. I never saw them, first off, even admit any fault whenever they failed in their launch or in their design of the launch, we can talk about shortly. Um, and I've never heard them say, "Hey, our design choice is just da 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 da," and just be honest about it. And so they never got people to kind of join their side in a sense. What I do want to
They,
talk about. Oh, go ahead.
they went very much on the classic, especially American corporate culture side, where you cannot admit any mistake.
Yes. Yep.
And that's just ruinous when you're making a product like, or pretty much any creative product, but especially for a product that requires a prolonged period to earn back its investment.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna try to sound edgy, but the reason that games like RuneScape and EVE Online are around are it's almost because they're not American. Because of the kind of games those are. You know what I'm saying? Like, these are very specific kinds of games that weren't run by American companies. And I think that's why they were able to function in the ways that they functioned, where they kind of just kept taking the directions they wanted to take without having to go bigger or go home or whatever else.
And make no mistakes. Like, I don't know much about RuneScape, but especially with EVE Online, is like, my dear lord, did they fuck up a lot.
Well, Jagex's thing is kind of similar to RuneScape, or sorry, to EVE Online, which is that they fucked up everything not RuneScape. And I'm sure you've heard the
Yeah,
same
but
meme
they
about.
also they also fucked up a lot of things about Eve. But that's one of those things, like, because they owned the whole darn thing, it was far more like organically, sustainably grown in a way that
And
they
they could
could get away
recover
with that kind of stuff.
exactly. They could
Yeah,
recover on those losses. That's a great point, Card. That's what I think might shock people about games like Amazon Game Studios is that how come people weren't willing to give them more of a chance? It's because this is a massive corporation suddenly getting involved into gaming. People are expecting you to come out and look like a fucking 10 out of 10. And
yeah,
whether you can say
and
that
you
that's
can't.
not fair or not, it's kind of irrelevant because it's just how things are. You have that much money involved and you're generating that much hype for your game, which they had a
Uh,
massive marketing campaign, as we know. And then
and like
suddenly
we
the population just drops off a fucking cliff.
live, yeah, and we're talking not about millions here. We're talking in the billions. Like, this is really serious amounts of money, even for a very large company that also ultimately has to answer to its shareholders.
Yes, and to be clear, I think people have this weird perspective that because Amazon had so much money that they were just gonna kind of let like Amazon Game Studios fart around, and I've been trying to tell people that wasn't the case from literally day one. When I was in the offices, they literally told me Bezos is involved in our discussions at times, and he literally tells us, and this is a true quote, that he expects the New World to be a top 10 streamed or video played game, like meaning on YouTube outlet or Twitch outlet. When I heard that, I remember thinking to myself, like, what the even if the game was great, which I didn't even know yet, when they told me that, I remember being like, what the fuck is this weird ass expectation? Are you guys delusional? Because like virtual worlds almost never make top 10. And when they do, it's for like 1 week when they come out or some shit. Like, we're almost never a top 10 stream game. And if it's one game, it's fucking WoW. And it's been WoW for the past 15 years, you know what I'm saying? Like, it hasn't been anything else top streaming. So whenever I was hearing this stuff, I remember just being like, what the
Keep in mind, like
fuck are you talking about?
like WoW also has a larger audience because it kind of stood at the grassroots of things like Twitch and YouTube. There's a lot of old built-in audience there that you're not going to get with a new product.
Well, I agree with you, but I think, and you know this already, but I wanted to connect an earlier point of yours about how you talked about how it's important to support a game after the launch. So Raph made that point in the video, and I know you remember it, is that Raph says, people always think of WoW as a pure grassroots thing. Maybe it was grassroots coming from a different, Warcraft engine that it wasn't supposed to be made for, and then getting adapted into this whole, like, game experience by guys
Oh,
who basically were just EverQuest fans. While that's true, after the game came out, like Raph said, they spent like 200 million on it to get the servers up and to make sure that all the infrastructure was perfect. So when Burning Crusade came out, they didn't have the same issues that they were having before. Like they That's how they won, guys. Like, it doesn't sound sexy to tell that part of the story, but WoW won because of their after launch support, not because of
Yep.
their pre launch support. They didn't do anything that even special. They've talked about it in multiple interviews with their how they developed the game. They literally were just developing it zone by zone. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was more of how they supported it after launch, both content wise, servers, advertisements, marketing. I mean,
Good customer support.
as much as I can shit on WoW at times and other people can, like you and I do all the time, I also have to just admit it was a fucking great product.
Yes.
Amazing product.
There's no question about it. As a product, it definitely worked, and they did it really smartly. But yeah, they understood because they were also a more established gaming company. They realized that because they had been supporting games for longer periods of time, that this sort of stuff matters.
Now let's talk about kind of like the initial reception of New World. So why did it go so bad for them? Well, my Death of a Game video covers that, but we'll go through it quickly here, which is just that they weren't ready, right? They weren't ready for launch, both in design and both in their ethos and how they were going to approach things, which is that they seem to have this sort of approach, which is exactly what they did. They launched the game towards the end of the year and didn't have major updates come right away. Now, most times developers will say that's because we want to have holidays. But the truth is, if you're trying to launch a major virtual world in the holiday times, you're not going to have holidays. Not if you want that game to actually work. It sounds fucked up, but this is just the sad reality of trying to develop a online world, right? Not just a game, but like a world.
It's very simple. If you want to launch an MMO, you're going to launch it at a time where you can have most of your staff still in the office for the next 6 months.
Yes.
Just like people taking breaks on their individual time separately, that's fine. But no, like, company shutdowns or government mandated holidays. Like, yes, let's launch it right at the end of the year. Which, like, if you launch a single player game, that's generally perfectly fine. Because you make your sales, there's some bloody bugs, and you're just like, fuck it, we'll fix those in February. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, and every time maybe an update happens or a new sale happens, maybe you ramp up things, do a little bit of like development, and then boom, you get more sales. But MMOs aren't like that. It's like you're constantly trying to attract more people into your game and keep the people that are already in it happy with things. So literally, you're not just fucking sprinting, it's a marathon. You're running and you're making good distance and you have to keep going and going and going and going and going.
Once you launch an MMO, you're running until you shut it down.
I think so too, and I think that like their inexperience there was a big reason why they weren't ready for that. But here's the problem, is that initial receptions about the game were so positive because of the big player numbers. That's pretty common, but that's something that I hope that like people can start learning more about. And again, I make this proclamation a lot, but I'm going to do it again. If you have somebody up here who fucking struggled in fucking Algebra 3 giving you math advice, there's definitely something that you're doing wrong mathematically, because I'm not a math wizard. But let me break this down for you. When your game comes out and it hits, 900K players peak, that's a big number, right?
Yep.
But here's the thing. Almost every single MMO in history will lose a third, at least, of their population just after the first couple of months. Just after the first couple of months. Now, here's the confusing part. Yeah, but how did WoW end up gaining more population? Because of expansions. Because it kept building the game out. So expansions are for the current players. But if the marketing is working and everybody's word of mouthing, which is how WoW spread, let's be honest, that's how I played it because my friends wouldn't shut up.
Yep.
They kept making me want to play it because I was a Blizzard fan. They're like, why don't you just play it? You're a Blizzard fan. And it was just like, all right, fuck it. I'll try it. Like that word of mouth marketing was so fucking powerful. And coming from, like you said earlier, this fucking fan favorite company that people already loved in Blizzard. So it's this perfect storm of like, the population was spreading, but not because expansions are specifically what attracts new players. but that expansions keep the normal players happy, which attracts new players. So it's kind of confusing, right? I think other developers have that mixed up. They think, oh, my new expac is gonna, like I think all the New World fans that were blowing up my DMs talking about how the game was gonna be successful. That's how they thought. They thought, oh well, expacs make the game successful. They
Nope.
they they do and they don't, right? It's more
I
like
think
they make people
you can,
happy with what they're already, experiencing.
yeah. But look at WoW right now. Like it's no longer near the. It's still a giant, but it's no longer the ultimate giant that it used to be. Because one of the other reasons why it grew is there was not all that much competition that was of a similar scale and quality.
Hmm.
So that really helped them as well. So I mean, getting players away from a lot of the other MMOs, which were not remotely as shiny looking, because that's one of the other things that Blizzard does. They do polish their stuff to near perfection.
Hmm.
It was easier to get those players out of there and whatever.
Especially their UI, which
In
you and
the
I can attest to at the
yeah,
time. Most of those games at the time had dog shit AI or UI, so it was like
oh
hard to
yeah,
just play the game because you couldn't even fucking click your character.
yep. But if you look at it nowadays, like a lot of the audience that you would want to have is going to be already established within whatever game that they're playing. And some of these people have been playing some of these games really, really long. So getting them out, away from there is just going to be a lot harder. So yeah, thinking that your expansion is going to be giving you back all of the players that you lost, either in existing ones that are returning or new ones that are showing up again, that doesn't really happen anymore.
No,
The
and
only
I've been
way,
telling people this even in consulting jobs I've worked. There's just no evidence to ever state that expansions have saved a game from the brink. There's just it
no,
doesn't happen.
I'm looking like because of Dune Awakening is on my mind, and I looked at that, and I recently it was like, could you fix the game? And it's like, yes, you can fix the game. I can fix Dune Awakening, no problem. But I can never make it a good product again because I will never get that audience back.
Yep.
The only way I could get that audience back would be to make a new game, to make
Are
Dune
you going
Awakening
back to
2.
that restaurant that you got food poisoning from?
That
Probably
also
not.
works.
You know what I'm saying though, but probably not.
Yeah,
Like
no,
because it's not just a physical thing; it's an emotional thing that gave you this reaction where
exactly.
you're like, "I'm not doing that shit again."
So it's like, that's why, if, for example, you have a game like Dune Awakening, like New World, and it sort of fails. If you are, as a company, you're like, I'm willing to invest, I want to make this better, what you're going to do is put a lot of effort into this existing product because that's the place where you're going to learn. You're going to learn to make that a good product. And with that knowledge, you're going to make a new product. So that by the time you're able to launch a new product, you're going to give a lot of rewards to your existing player base when they come over to your new product because you kind of want them over there because they are your loyal players. So you want to get them over there for all of my care, give them the game for free. You can launch a new product, you know what to do, it should actually work, and you should not have anywhere the massive losses that people see, like a continuous loss. Like you're going to still see your post-launch loss because that's a natural thing, like we talked about. But after that, it should stabilize, and then you have that long-term healthy product.
Let's talk about that here because let's say they knew they were going to take a loss because they changed their game's design path last second.
Yeah,
That might be kind of true, but then they had that Castle or whatever his name is, their CEO come out and celebrate it, being like, "Hey, look, guys, we won." Always a sign of utter
no,
incompetence because you're never
yep,
supposed to celebrate within the first couple of months. So that was
nope.
already the first red flag for me with leadership. But why did the launch numbers drop so largely? Like I said, the Death of a Game video talks about that, but Card and I can just give you the quick two reasons, which is that the economy in the game was completely busted, and it was completely,
Yep.
utterly exploitable. So essentially,
It
once you can
actually,
exploit that in a persistent survival game, the game's over. You beat the game already because you're
and it
never going to
actually
lose your
dealt
stuff.
with, yeah, and it actually dealt with deflation,
Mm.
which was hilarious because
That's
That's
true.
something
That's true.
that almost never happens within an MMO because
Hmm.
generally the problem is that you have massive hyperinflation. But New World actually had a problem with deflation initially. So money became so valuable that people didn't want to part with it because you couldn't get enough of it.
Yeah, and even like how the game was for me is that the crafting resources basically trivialized money in the game because you could just keep
For a good
redoing your
part, yeah.
weapons and not having to buy weapons up. I would say up until you're up to max level, pretty much. Like, so just there's more ideas like that too. There was actual exploits in the game that clans found out ways to make like ass loads of money that weren't fixed. I talked about this before. Mighty Teapot actually contacted me before the game came out and said, "Hey, you know this game's busted, right?" And I said, "Yeah, but what are you talking about?" And he goes, "Well, me and my homies, and again, these are hardcore Guild Wars 2 player guys. Everybody, for reference, these are like super hardcore gamers, meaning these are the guys that are gonna break your game." He told me we've already beat the game. I'm like, "What do you mean?" He says we've made like thousands and thousands of gold. And that was before the game came out. And I remember being like, "So how did you do it?" And it was just like, "Well, we're big. We capture things. We hold resources. We flood the market first. We make all the money." And, it's like, these are kind of classic issues that can happen with MMO economies. Usually because
That's
there's not enough
just
of a gold sink. Usually because things weren't patched right. Usually because
and that,
developers never played it all the way to max level, so they don't know how the economy works exactly. But yeah, I agree with Madness. That game had all the inflations. It had deflation, inflation, fucking beeflation, invented inflations.
I'll I'll say this: if you want to make an actual virtual world, you're going to need to hire at least one really good economist
I don't understand how you couldn't do it, Card. Like, let's talk about this
for
for a
the
second. You and I want to have
for
virtual
a long
worlds.
time.
Why would you not? How could you not do it? Are you an economist, Card? Am I an
No,
economist? No. Do we feel
no,
confident running economies in a game? Not fully.
not
So,
fully.
so what are we talking about here?
You're going to talk about that you need somebody who actually understands how an economy would work in a scenario like this. That, like CCP, like developers of Eve Online, for a very long time they
Mm,
had an economist on staff.
true.
They got rid of that person at some point, but like after a decade of running or something, you sort of have your economy in a state where you understand it as well. But initially, it's like you have to understand how people do this, and this economist is not going to tell you at the beginning this is how your economy is going to work. No, they're going to look at what players are doing because the players what they're doing is going to generate the data which the economist can then use. It's like, okay, this is what we're seeing, this is where we can see potential problems, this is where we're going to need to make changes. That's why you want to have long open beta periods, because they will not test everything properly, because that's another thing that I could talk about that's separate from the economy. But it does allow you to generate that data, retune your economy accordingly, and you will keep retuning that economy for the next 2-3 years after launch until it hits a good point. Because people will find continuous new ways to try and mess with it. Because that's what we do. We are gamers, especially us virtual world gamers. There's few things we love more than to break the game that we're playing.
And that's sort of the thing is that they were clearly pushing to launch because they had to,
Yeah,
because
they
they
are
already
fools.
delayed their game for nearly a full year. And that full year delay was never going to be enough to fix the game anyway. So it's like essentially the game was in this almost impossible scenario where it was like, unless they just had some massive level of success that was just weirdly sustainable for some reason, which just doesn't really happen. Not in these days when there's so many games for people to play and enjoy. Um, it was just never going to work. And I think like I'm looking back at New World and their updates and expansions, and I mean it's crazy. You got to think like the first expansion, Rise of the Angry Earth, came out. I mean, this is going to shock you, but it came out 2 years ago. That was almost 2 years after the game launched. Well, actually, it was 2 years after the game launched because it launched in October. So, meaning they took 2 years to drop the first expansion. Now, everyone might be saying, yeah, but isn't that normal for an MMO, so on and so forth? Perhaps. But remember, the game launched without anything in it, meaning it had like
Yeah.
one dungeon. And I think
Look
the.
at classic WoW, what it had in content,
Yeah, it
and
had a
then
full raid
gone.
cycle. It was easy, but it had a
Yeah.
full raid cycle to at launch. And then that obviously got you prepared for the next content to come. And that's the thing that I remember whenever I saw it announced, Rise of the Angry Earth, how many, like, what's new about this? There was a new zone and one new expedition. Sorry, I keep calling them dungeons, but there's dungeons in the game, and expeditions are the raids. So you're telling me 2 years for one expedition? One. That means you would have to wait, what, 2 years for the next one, which is exactly what happened? That's not enough content. One
It's
expedition
not
every
remotely
fucking
enough
two.
content.
Yeah, it's not even close to enough content. I mean, for reference, Terra Online was getting
And
like
also, like,
two major dungeons every year.
yeah, especially something like a dungeon or a raid is something that you can also just make on the side and just add within your existing world to give people new content while you work on a proper expansion, which would create a whole new area, like whole new zones, new mobs, new quests, new stories, and everything. So that's a much more complicated endeavor, which would also include new dungeons and raids.
They were doing them in parallel because they thought it made sense because that's what everyone else did historically. What they didn't realize is that it's like trying to get topped off as a water bottle or as a cup of water, but your water's all the way at the bottom. They didn't even have the
Yeah.
water, required to get to the top to be full like these other games were when they were offering their new zone, new expansion. So when those games got those expansions, it really was an addition of content, right?
Yep.
Not filling a gap and trying to put the water into this cup that wasn't even full to begin with. And I think that that's just why, I was so confident about my Death of the Game video. Um, you know, being a case of like this game is not going to recover because you just can't make money like that. Like there's no way to make money when you're taking 2 years to make your expansion and then your expansion's barely selling anything. And so,
There's,
go ahead.
it's very simple. If you think that you can make money on an MMO nowadays with a cycle like that and with a studio of that size, the answer is just always going to be no. I think the only studios that can really make that cycle still work are the ones that work with the existing products that still have really large established audiences.
Yes, and already built up relationships with their audience like Yoshi P did,
Yeah,
where you're able to tell your audience, hey guys, see you in 2 years, and it works.
yeah.
New World
Because
can't do that because what the fuck were you going to believe in? No one believed in them.
no, and they didn't have an audience size enough to be able to get away with that.
Good point.
Because you're going to need a fairly sizable audience to be able to generate enough revenue to pay for the sort of stuff that you need to make a whole new section of theme park, which is really quite expensive.
I mean, you've talked about this before, but it's like you have guys in the back working on the next range of content already, you know?
But when you're making an MMO, by the time you're hitting the last 2 years before launch, the content people are already working on your first expansion. Because the content by now should already have been done. You're just tweaking things. And you're just brushing things up and working on the economy. You're testing with your open beta players and stuff like that. That's what you're doing those last 2 years. But your content people, they're already working on that next expansion. And while they're working on the next expansion, the people that are really looking ahead, the storyboarders, they're probably already looking at the next expansion.
Mhm.
Because that's the sort of cycle that you're running with if you're going to be running an MMO with frequent expansion launches because you're making a theme park
Yep.
environment where you need to feed this audience that you have with the new content continuously. So you're working ahead for your current launch, for the launch that's after that, while you're already coming up with the basics of the launch that's even coming after that one.
And even
which
like
is
to add more
insane to think
context,
about.
no, for sure. I was going to say, even to add more context, throughout this, you ran towards this kind of genre of game because you thought it was going to be easier for you. You thought that was going to make things easier for you. Because idea wise, it's easier, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of actually production and producing and keeping up with this level of production you need to make this idea work, not easy, guys. Like, I asked, Raph Koster point blank, hey, is this concept of Final Fantasy 14 and WoW as these like theme park MMOs, is that even feasible for other developers? He's like, not if you don't have hundreds of millions.
Yeah. That's literally the sort of money that you need. Like, it's just so fucking expensive. This is like, and people are like wondering, it's like, how can these smaller, almost dying MMOs stay alive? Well, it's because they don't get actual meaningful new content, or sometimes they get a little bit of new content, but they're also loaded with long established microtransaction systems, so that relatively small audience can still generate enough money to pay for the 2 dozen staff that they have to keep adding things back into the game. Like a STO, for example, yeah, they will launch an occasional new ship and one new mission or so every 6 months. And it's like, yeah, they can keep that up with just a couple of people. And that's all that kind of a game really can support monetarily wise. And if you look at a player base of here, like in New World, with their numbers, it is like, yeah, even if you had the most egregious microtransactions, you could never make enough money of that amount of people to pay for a full studio to make you full theme park content.
Yes, and that was the point that I was trying to tell people about recent news regarding New World. But before we get there, let me just go to the first expansion, which we've already talked about a little bit. But here are the numbers for that. The numbers jumped up to 77,000 peak, and then 37,000, which is ironically only 2K more than whatever it had more recently. But anyway, the point being is that, like, you look at this, and if you're just literally like huffing on hopium, you might say W, W, oh my god, W. But like Card and I sat there and talked about, maybe even on stream as well, is like, we knew the game was fucked after the first expansion 100%. Like, maybe before we had like 60, 70, 80%. But after the first X-Pack, I was 100% this game's going to fail. Because you drop one X-Pack, and that's the best you got? And the hardcore fans are happy with it? It shows you that there's like a level of delusion happening between the hardcore fans that are still playing it and the people developing it, where it's like they still believe in things because they're out of touch of everybody else. You know what I'm saying? Meaning they don't realize that this is not good enough for anybody else.
No, this is not even 10% of what you had as your initial, as your initial launch audience.
I mean, to put it into serious like context, and I think you would agree with me, guys, this is like launching WoW Classic after 2 years of launching it. Meaning, like, let's say you come out with WoW, and you'd launch the rest of the game 2 years later. This is like what this is. The first expansion was more of them just completing the game to a state that was actually less content filled than WoW, which came out in 2004. So
yeah, so people will not get excited for that.
No, they're not going to get excited, no matter how good the game looks. So you see the population then just start to fucking drop off a cliff, and then of course you have the more recent expansion, which was I think Nighthaven.
I kept up with the names on there, but yeah, they launch one more expansion. You see it climb up and crash back down, and then the recent one, it climbs back up a little bit, and just to crash back down again. And every time it climbs up, it is a lesser and lesser climb than the previous one, which is also a very clear sign that it's really not working.
Okay, so Nighthaven was released on October 13th, so this month. But it actually wasn't an expansion. People on Reddit keep calling it an expansion incorrectly, but I'm looking at the correct information according to their website. They don't dub it an expansion. They call it a release, an update. So that tells me that they don't even feel confident enough to call it an expansion. But anyway, Nighthaven happened in October of 2025, so that's more recently. So you can say that like the population jumped up more recently, right? And this over here at 2024, I think that was whenever it went to Eternum. So that's console and making the, I think like the base game's free, or I can't remember how their trial works, but they have like a trial slash like you buy the game and the first
If they get
oh, go ahead.
just to 60,000 people when they make it free, then dear lord.
I can't remember if it was making the first expansion free or making the game. Well, okay, let me say this. The game on record, in multiple instances I've seen with my own eyes, has at least given away hundreds of thousands of copies for free. So
Yeah.
I just know that that's a fact from the numbers that I've seen personally. And also that they did a free giveaway whenever the game came out, I think 2 to 3 months after it. They also bundled it with graphics cards. I remember seeing it specifically bundled with graphics cards. So they were finding a lot of ways to kind of inflate their numbers a little bit.
Which
Unfortunately, yeah, as you're probably about to
failed
say,
miserably.
yeah, in a virtual world, that doesn't really inflate your numbers because people
Nope.
still aren't really playing the game. And to your point, the bigger problem people don't understand. Why did I even get on stream and want to talk about this shit today? To be honest, two big reasons. One, obviously, want to talk about, putting a bow on the rest of the New World story. But the other reason is because I was reading Reddit. And I know every bad story I ever have starts that way. I'm just kidding. I'm reading Reddit and I'm seeing people just when the game was getting its life back, just when it was making strides again. I can't believe they do this now, just when the game was like at the
Yeah.
stage. And I'm like, what the fuck are we talking about, guys? Like, why do we have to be this delusional whenever a game gets put on the chopping block that we have to just like insert memories into our head like fucking that Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, Total Recall, and being like, you know what I'm saying? We have to like insert memories into our head and like pretend to ourselves. It's like, okay, first off, let's actually break down whatever the numbers were, right? So the numbers were at about like 30 to 35,000 players on average, or like that's what they had peaked at. Sorry. These numbers aren't entirely bad, but remember what Card said earlier, guys? If your game's not made for microtransactions, having players come back to the game doesn't make you any money, right? There's no subscription. They're not buying an expansion. The update, it was an update. You didn't pay for it.
Yeah.
So how were they going to make money?
And I'm talking about like relatively heavy levels of microtransaction,
Yeah, like the
what you
games
would
that
need.
Carter is talking about are games like MapleStory, games that have been around for like 20 years, but are still making hundreds of millions off of the strength of their microtransaction kind of like economies. And the small fish, like Quiz, that probably just generate a couple, thousand every year, but that's enough to keep the game running.
Yeah.
New World didn't have any of that. It was never making its revenue from microtransactions, really. And part of that is a good thing, right? Part of that is like, as a gamer, we can be like, oh, it didn't affect gameplay that much, and there wasn't a lot of pay to win. But the problem that some gamers just have to come to grips with is these online games are expensive, and they have to make money. If they're not making money through charging you expansions that are successful, meaning that they can keep charging you more of them and you keep playing the game, or they're not charging you to play the game monthly, how are they going to make money? Skins, potential pay to win aspects. Well, that's why so many people can shit on those aspects that, when games have them, but then we'll sit here and be confused why New World fails. It's like,
And keep
what?
in mind here, there's an important detail. This was a game made by Amazon Game Studios. Amazon is the largest provider of server hosting in the world by now. So they ran on their own servers. So their whole cost for them running that game server-wise was also already significantly lower than what just about any other studio would have to deal with. And it still wouldn't work out with this kind of player numbers.
No. Because, like, when people are sitting there celebrating 30,000 players, guys, I understand people can be naive. Sometimes they don't understand things. But just think about it for a second. If they spent hundreds of millions on the game and the engine, meaning that both combined are probably worth like almost $500 million,
Easily.
easily, right? That's not even crazy. If I talk to any of my
That's at the
contacts in the
low end.
industry, that's what I was going to say. I think my context would say that they spent closer to a bill. So let's say that they spent half a bill. How are they going to make that money back with 30,000 players? Nobody's paying subscription fees. They're not buying expansions. Just literally do the math, guys. Like, let's do the math. Let's do 30,000 fucking players. Multiply by
like World of Warcraft.
$15. That's only $450,000, even if those 30,000 were paying subscription. The game's not making enough money.
No.
And I don't know. I sound a little bit
It would
condescending
make
today, but it's only because I feel like it's like, how have we not figured this out yet? But go ahead, Guard.
if it was made by a small studio, this would be fucking amazing numbers. But it's not. And that's also where the failure analysis has to come in. It's like, yeah, you can compare it to some other game that's made by a small studio, and it's like, but this is fine. It's like, yeah, they got 50 or 100 people on staff. Maybe it's fine for them. But they're not a giant fucking multi-trillion-dollar corporation whose game studio has apparently 14,000 plus employees attached to it directly or indirectly. That's an enormous quantity of people that have to be paid. And even if we say that they get paid really bad, so on average they get paid 50,000 a year. Well, if we're only making 500,000 a month from our subscription services, that doesn't pay for a lot of those people.
No, it doesn't. And even just like you said, like overhead costs of having employees and so on and so forth, and having the employees that aren't even working on your game because they're making the next content. Like, meaning they're not like directly working on the game at that moment. They're building whatever is next and new to come. And so it's like,
And
it doesn't make us like, grizzled, bitter old men when we talk about this stuff, guys. And no, it doesn't mean that I created my Death of a Game channel just so I can smugly insult, games or companies when they fail. It's like, no, there's clues here. There's bits of evidence that people are ignoring, and largely they ignore it because they have strong feels. And I get it. This is an industry that creates a strong amount of feels. I mean, guys, I met my fucking first girlfriend in a virtual world. So
I mean,
I think I know
games,
that.
games are designed to play on our emotions. And that's very good. But they're also a business. And the business is just run on very simple numbers. And one of the other things that you have to realize is just because a studio is large, it doesn't mean it's like, oh, you have 1,000 people, that means you got 1,000 developers. Now, the more you grow, the more people you have working there simply to support the fact that you have so many people working there. There's actually a degree of inefficiency that comes in as a company grows. So a very large company is actually less efficient with the money that they have than a very small company. Because a very small company maybe only needs one HR person and one person at the front desk who also handles all of the coffee, the appointments, and all of those things. A large company will have entire support divisions within them.
Mhm.
These are all people that have to be paid, but they're not making anything for your final product.
Yeah,
But
that was
without
true
them,
when
you
I
couldn't
visited their
function.
studio in Irvine. They had an office manager who wasn't like a developer, but I could, he was just like somebody who helped around the office.
Yeah. And you have a whole IT divisions to support those kind of things. So yeah, that all of that adds up to coming out to the fact is like, yeah, we're all having strong feelings about these games and of their successes and their failures. But the main reason that a lot of them will just fail is in the end is like they have to be a business. And that business case needs to match the company with whose business it is, which is why, say, if they can find a studio that's willing to take New World, they will just be like, okay, we're going to make this much smaller. They may actually add in microtransactions just in order to get them enough money to actually keep the game operational. And they probably won't be making big content drops.
My guess makes a really good point too. Plus, with their servers being only at about 2 to 3,000 CCU per server, the cost per online player is way, way less efficient than it should because it's a buy-to-play game. And then he says,
Yeah.
because that's very dumb in a buy-to-play game. And I agree. I mean, people don't think about it that way, my guess, because like we're talking about here is sometimes when I talk about the business stuff, it makes me seem like the evil overlord or whatever, or whatever. Like, even amongst like my artist friends, like whenever they would tell me about an idea, and I'm like, okay, how are you gonna make money? Because that's always the first thing I'm gonna ask. It's like, guys, I'm an artist, but I always think about the money situation,
Yeah.
partly because I grew up, broke, wanting to make more money than I had, but also just because to make art work, if you don't have a budget, you got to know how the money works. And you got to think to yourself, I know you are, my guess, but other people have to think to themselves, like, how are these games making money? And the concept of being like, is this good enough? Oh, it's good enough for me. It's kind of like the. So I'm gonna make a funny meme. You know how there's like the two levels of consent. Both parties are saying yes to each other. Girl, guy, 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 girl, girl, whatever, right? Well, in a business interaction or in a business environment like this, business, aka good business, is just like the third entity, and he's waiting for his consent. You know what I'm saying? It's like you could bypass good business all you want, but it's gonna fuck you up at some point. Meaning that if you're not thinking about what like my guest is saying, how much money are we making per player, per month, per year, then you're gonna get to the point to where you have to start thinking about that when everything's already fucked, and now you have to add pay to win to your game.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. It's too late, basically.
Yeah. This is like, I'm, I will, for that reason, it's like I'm not opposed to microtransactions personally,
Me either.
because if they're done well, they can just be a very good revenue source for a studio that makes the game. And if you make a really good game and those microtransactions allows that game to be in existence and be continuously improved, to me seems very beneficial. And quite often it ends up better for the overall player base than a subscription service, because a subscription service is a barrier to entry.
Yes, exactly. Which is,
And
as we've talked about in private, why you and I wouldn't, prefer to make one. Like for people,
no,
this might shock you guys, so maybe we'll just put this out the back. But if Card and I right now had the money, we're making a free to play game, guys. I know this might hurt some people's feelings, but we want people
yeah,
to play our game. Like that's what's more important to us as artists. And I'll let Card talk now so he can explain it more. But
it's important for us as artists, but also from a business perspective,
mhm,
it makes just the most sense,
I think so
because
too.
I can then generate revenue from the people that are willing to generate me revenue. And those people, because making a virtual world, want people to play with, which are the other people that may not have the will or the means to help me generate revenue. And if you do it really well, what quite often happens is those people that initially join were like, I'm just going to play, I'll see.
Hmm.
If your game is really good, they probably will start to generate revenue for you as well.
I buy my friends
So
skins in League of Legends, just
that's
because
also another point.
it's just a way that
And
we like to like, you know, help each other and be and like have fun. You know what I'm saying? Like that kind of
yeah,
stuff happens when you've played this game for so long and there's a marketplace where you could do that kind of stuff. So you're right. Like,
yeah. So there's many ways in a free to play environment where you can generate revenue from people in a way that's not very intrusive.
mhm.
And you can also have it so that people can buy your virtual currency, for example, and just sell that to players for in-game currency, which is another means that certain players may access it, keep your economy running there as well. So this is how you would generate it out and build a very good player base. You remove the barrier to entry, so anybody can enter. But if your microtransaction system is good enough, it also means that you make enough revenue to run the whole shop. But if you're going to put up a barrier to entry, like with a buy to play a game, which is a barrier to entry, that means you're
Massive.
going to automatically disqualify a large portion of your audience. So that's number one. Another one is if I'm adding a subscription fee, that means I have a continuous barrier to entry. Like as a kid, paying my subscription fee for World of Warcraft wasn't always easy.
Nope.
That was a
Same for
barrier
me.
to entry.
Like we've talked about before, I had
Yeah,
to buy time cards because I didn't have
yeah,
access to
me
credit
too.
cards. Like,
Me too.
and
I
maybe
was a
other
kid.
people in chat can confess like they had similar experiences, but I know many other people like me who I found out about Marquee Dragon and the black market trade online because I would buy time cards. Like it sounds
Yeah,
hilarious, but that's where I would get them from is Marquee Dragon.
I mean, the reason I got my first credit card when I was 18 was so that I could buy time cards for EVE Online in America, because that would save me like 30%
Hmm,
over buying them here
you're
because of the
right.
exchange rate differences.
You're right. It was considerably more expensive because I would look at both versions when I would buy them.
Yeah, so yeah, we play around with it, but the whole idea is like having no barriers to entry just means anybody can enter. But another barrier to entry that's also important to mention here is actually how hard is the game to run? New World was not an easy game to run because of its inherent, background relying on CryEngine, and CryEngine is not an easy engine to make easy to run, which is another barrier to entry. Because if people don't have a lot of money, the chances are also that they're not going to have the best of hardware, which is also the reason why you see many virtual worlds also pushing for console releases,
It's
because
also
consoles
why
are
games
fairly
like
widespread.
RuneScape, as we've talked about before, has
Yeah,
permeated so many different cultures. Like,
yeah,
for
because you
example,
needed a
here,
browser.
yeah, here in Mexico, guys, like I can probably find people on the street that played RuneScape. You know what I'm saying? Like it's such a popular game in general that like I know so many friends here that played RuneScape.
Exactly.
WoW's
It
more
had
of like
almost no
a,
barrier.
there's some WoW players and you encounter them, of course, because it's a popular game. But it's like, but you nowadays it's like Fortnite, RuneScape, these free to play games. The audiences are just so much larger. It's just not even close. Like,
If it's free to play, easy to access, and runs on a broad range of hardware, that's your best goal. And that final barrier is also important, like that easy to access, because a lot of MMOs can make themselves too complex, especially early on. It's like you have to understand if you're going to make a very complex game, you have to spend a lot of time teaching the players your game. So you cannot start with a very complex environment because it will just immediately bring people out of it. It's like, holy shit, what's going on? I don't know, and they just like give up.
mhm.
So that's another very important barrier to entry. You have to make it so when people enter your world that they are slowly introduced to a lot of these things.
It's why I hate so many survival games, Rust included, because it's just like
Yeah,
they still haven't figured this shit out. They just spawn you there like DayZ used to. And when I would try to get my friends to play DayZ who weren't PvPers, this is what they would always tell me. Dude, isn't this game just running around, spawning and just dying? And I'm just like, and I would always be like, I mean, yeah, like
yeah,
pretty
it is.
much. It is. So when they would tell me that, I was never that kind of person, and cards the same way.
Yeah.
We're not going to try to convince you to play a game. Like, unless you're like, asking us as a fan of
I
it
mean,
to explain it. But like, I don't think we're the kind of players that are going to be like, no, no, you should play this game. Trust me, bro. Like,
I, what I will do is if you try to play the game, is I'll try to teach you the game.
me too.
That's actually what I did in EVE Online before I finally won EVE Online by quitting it. Is I literally just spent all of my money together with some others, and what we did is I've designed fits for frigates for the basic T1 frigates that anybody with like a maximum of 1 or 2 hours of skill training in EVE Online could fly. It costs a lot of money to build those because I would use a lot of NPC drop items only, so you couldn't craft those. And what we just did, we literally invited people in, we gave them these ships for free, and we flew out in low sec to do PvP with them. And they would die a lot, and we would kill some people, but it was just there's like, okay, we're just going to teach you a lot of the basics that you need to survive in Eve. And one of the most important things that we're going to teach you here is don't be afraid to die. And with that kind of teaching, what happens is that people actually start to enjoy your game. Even if it's what many people call a online hell game box.
Yeah, in fact, one last thing about New World. The worst thing about New World, and Card and I have talked about this a lot, is that we actually think that the container of the game is not even that bad. Like, the gameplay's
Oh,
pretty decent. The visuals are nice. The sound is incredible. There's a lot to work with there. Like if you
Yes.
tell a storyteller, hey, we have great sound, great visuals, but like the map's kind of boring. But what if we could work on
Story
that?
sucks.
Yeah, and the story sucks, but what if we could work on those things? They would be like, I could work with that, like
Yes.
because it's
If you
workable.
if you give me New World, like if you give us New World, and you just it's like, okay, here's a decent budget, we can make something with that. Simply with a lot of the stuff that's already there, but just rejiggling it and making it actually interesting.
Yeah, actually adding world story would be the biggest
Yeah,
thing, right? Like trying to unite people together for world story together, Hey, we're surviving. Oh, shit's going on. Whatever faction you're a part of.
yeah,
Like there has to be some
exactly.
connectivity there storytelling wise because what they ended up doing
Connectivity.
was creating a game that's like fun to level up in, and you and I did that. You can level up to max level and it's not a bad experience. But then after you do that, you're kind of just like, all right,
Now what?
now what? And not even just because like it's the end game, but just because it's just like it doesn't feel like they had any more thought after that. Like, okay, well, I'm an
Yeah.
adventurer. Now I've like finished my basic adventure. Now what can I do to like, take my time or like hone my skills elsewhere? It's like you have to start thinking about that stuff. Like just think about we
Oh
talk about
yeah.
this a lot, but like a D&D encounter. In fact, you'll scroll through YouTube shorts and watch D&D like highlights. I watch them all the time randomly. You know how many times these highlights are whenever they're in combat? I might shock you guys. You want to know what percentage of these highlights are? They're coming from sessions that people are showing you as a highlight of a session. Do you want to know how many of these come from combat sessions? I can't remember a single one. I'm not
Yes.
even kidding. It sounds like I'm joking, but I'm being 100% serious. I watch these all the time, and I'll scroll through them and just be watching these different scenarios because it's funny to see people's, different creations and their characters. They are never in combat scenarios. They're always in the thick of something. Maybe they're even in a dramatic scenario, but they're not fighting. Like, in fact, one of the ones I was just recently watching was like this guy was hitting on this girl, and she's like, "Oh, I just need something to dry my hands with." And he's like, "Don't worry, I have everything you need." And he pulls out this like cloth, and she goes, "Yeah, I'm actually really hungry." And there was an animated version of it, and he goes, "Well, don't worry, I have just what you need." And she's like, "Is that a steak?" And he like pulled a steak out of his coat. He's like, I'm saying seriously, I have everything you need in my coat because it was a magical coat." So like, it was just a funny scenario where it's just like, how often is that kind of stuff happening when combat is so much the focus in so many of these games? It just that's why SWOTOR, as much as we can give it shit, it had moments like that. It had some kind of silly moments and funny moments. The problem is
Yeah.
that almost everything always resulted in just fighting each other. But but even then, there were some missions you could just like scare someone into fucking killing themselves or tell this guy if you do this shit,
Walking off.
I'm coming back and just walk off. Like there were some great
Play a light.
scenarios like that for sure.
Yeah. Play a light side set warrior and just
That's
having
exactly what I
like
was thinking.
literally confusing the living hell out of some Jedi that are just like, I don't understand what's going on anymore, and they just give up.
Yeah, my favorite was like that one mission where you're trying to uh assassinate this like or basically like confront this like Jedi guy. And I confront him and I just like murder him or whatever. Or no, sorry, and I'm nice to everybody in the entrance when I pull up on him. He's like, "All right, yeah, that seems like we're gonna work together." And my guy's like, "All right, time to die," because light side Sith warriors are basically like they might be nice in the process of the thing, but like my character, sometimes the light side options were still pretty like dark side. You know what I'm saying? Like the one I'm talking
You were
about was
never.
literally like you could leave this guy to get blown up, or you could just kill him personally. I just killed him personally, and he was shocked by that. He's like, "You seem like such a nice guy." It's like, yeah, but I'm still the villain.
Yeah. And like, a lot of these moments is just like also what you need, and you need those environments that encourage these kind of things as well, which is why having great social hubs and trade places and all of these things is also just really important in your game. But
Mhm.
also just a lot of side story thingies and silly things happening.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. Is you can't take yourself
And
too seriously. That's such a problem I have in
yes,
almost all of these MMO stories and games like that. Like the recent Korean ones I've been playing, especially like the Asian ones, because I don't want to just say Korean because I've been playing some Chinese ones too. Is that they take themselves way too fucking seriously. And it's like, y'all gotta have some more fun in this shit because it's like, no, like the more there's always this ratio I have in my head is like, the more you take something serious, the more you have to be like fucking David Lynch or I don't know, you have to be like fucking Stanley Kubrick. You have to be like this incredible like visionary and like and do everything perfect. Whereas if you inject the humor into it alongside it, which is something that Mass Effect did a good job of, for example,
yep,
then you have this beautiful mixture of like a good story, but also comedic relief. Like people
and
remember
comedic relief is
Garrus.
important.
Exactly. And I was going to use Garrus as an example. People remember Garrus as comedic relief. He is, but you want to know another thing that Garrus was that a lot of people, including the girls that would have crushes on him, seem to forget, and I always would remind them. He was a cold-blooded murderer. He literally
Oh
believed
yes,
in murdering bad people. Like when you encounter him again and he's like working for fucking Corsac or like on some like solo assassin mission, he literally was gonna go on a fucking vigilante killing spree. Like
yep,
so it always cracked me up that he's such a lovable character, but that shows you how good writing just works, right? Nobody remembers Garrus as this kind of like murderous, like grudge holding guy, but he was. He was murderous and grudge holding. Exactly, Death Cope. Maybe that's why is all the girls were saying I can fix him.
I mean, technically, you can fix him in quite a few ways when you play the game.
No, you can, and also part of your relationship, because I saw my ex at the time that I was with go through it when they were playing, is you kind of help him just be more goofy, you know? And like if anything, he
Chill out a bit.
yeah, I was gonna say he and you kind of relax because you're kind of hard ass Commander Shepard and he like kind of ribs you a bit, but if you actually do it back with him, he likes it a lot. Like and you end up
Yeah,
I think you get more favor with him if you actually end up ribbing with him. And so like I think that's like, you know, showcasing that his character and you know, again, the writing was good, right? They broke up the monotony of being Commander Shepard. Because I mean, who else would have said that amazing line where he's like, "If you've got the reach, I've got the flexibility." No, he's like, "I've got the reach,
mhm.
you've got the flexibility."
I mean, good writing is really important.
Because guys, remember he
You,
was a sniper. Come on.
yep. I still outshot him every single time, though.
Yeah, for me, it was always funny seeing him snipe because I was like, Garrus is a sniper, but he was like an assault sniper. Whenever I would play, he would never fucking take cover, and I would always see him running straight first at the enemy, sniping in the process. You know what I'm saying? When he would do that animation where he's like sitting there sniping, boom, 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 and it keeps going up, and he's like running at them. I'm like, Garrus, what are you doing, bro? That looks painful. But sniping in
Yeah.
Mass Effect, unfortunately, as you've mentioned already, is so OP. When I went back to Mass Effect 1 and I was playing Infiltrator, I was killing fucking Geth before they even responded to me. I was killing them so far away, they were off screen, and so they wouldn't animate, but they would just die.
Yep.
Like, and I'm just like, yeah, it's a little bit broken.
But that's sometimes also the fun with having RPG mechanics, especially in single player games. It's like, you know, sometimes you just have to let the silliness stay in there because it is also part of the character. And if people are like, well, this is not really fun, it's like, well, you can just build your sniper rifle to be more reasonable. Like, the choice is yours. That's one of the whole ideas behind an RPG.
Yeah, I mean, I think I told you this. I'm a great example of that. I turned my pistol into a shotgun, and I turned my shotgun into basically a rocket launcher. It only had two shots, and it would shoot that fucking giant fire like bomb at you. That's that one and the shotgun pistol. That's how I beat Saren on the hardest difficulty. Like my shit was completely RPGified, you know, up the wazoo. So when you talked about your sniper or whatever, I was like, I'm not one to talk. My pistol was literally a shotgun.
Yeah. My sniper was a cannon.
For people wondering what that's like, meaning literally what I would shoot with my pistol, I would overheat after 4 shots. So it was literally like a show, like a
I
shotgun.
mean, my sniper would overheat after a single shot.
I knew it would
But
because you had that super like powerful shit where it would
yeah,
immediately beep 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 beep. Beep.
but it didn't matter because whatever I was shooting at and anything around it was dead.
I
So
love the
yeah.
Vanguard a lot too, Madness. When I went back to the game, I've actually talked to Card about this before that I was really weird like playing RPGs growing up in the sense that like maybe because of like the environment I grew up in, but like I was kind of like afraid to be different, even though I obviously was. So I would always play like humans. I would always play like yeah. I got that beep 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 beep. Perfect, right, Fluff Master? Because I've trust me, I've used a lot of explosive weapons that overheat easily. So I'm used to hearing it. But but anyway, whenever I would play RPGs, I would always play like the human and play like the base skin. Like I would never customize myself. I was just like I don't know. I was weird about that stuff. I just thought like that was how you're supposed to play. So I would never really like change my guy. So when I played for the first time, I played as a soldier, and it always makes people laugh, especially like people who know me as being like a creative person. They're like, "You played Mass Effect as a soldier? That's so boring." And I was like, "I mean, I get what people are saying, but if you're good at shooting, soldiers really OP because you literally stop time constantly." And then refresh your abilities, stop time again. And also, if you're good at grenades, your grenades are a one-hit kill on anything that's not basically like a super armored Geth. So, but at the same time, like Madness is saying, which is why I brought this up, when I went back and played it for like the third, fourth time, I forgot how many times I've beaten it. I played as a Vanguard because I was just like, fine, you know what? I want to see what the hype's about because people hype this up a lot. I mean, people were dressing up as Vanguards when I went to fucking PAX. So they were like
Mhm.
super hyped. I understand why they're hyped now. they're
Yep.
they're
They're hella
definitely pretty
fun.
fun. It's like playing like a battle mage basically, which is just like always a favorite of many people. It's what most people play when they're playing Skyrim. Is they usually use magic and they're using their weapon, which is a battle mage, right? Like so, most people find battle mage to be fun because it's like you're tough, you're resilient, but you also have the ability to fucking shoot people or hit them with a fucking spell.
I started out with sniping, and then I went just like, you know what? I'm just gonna charge into everybody and blast them in the face with a shotgun because that seems like a very sensible thing to do.
Yes, robust. Soldiers were more specifically OP in the first game. That's a good point. So the Vanguard card might remember this too, was severely upgraded in the second game. Like the first game, the
Yeah.
Vanguard was kind of just like a
Meh.
class that you played. Yeah, I found the Infiltrator or the Adept to be more fun personally, but when the second game came out and people started testing it, like my friends who were big Mass Effect fans, guys, the Vanguard was like far and away most people's favorite character, and I can
Yeah.
see now why. But yeah, the soldier went from being powerful in the first game to being fucking shit in the second game by comparison. I'll say by comparison because I think straight adept, and a Vanguard's just more powerful than the soldier in the second and third game because the you can literally like most people don't know this, but like you might say, yeah, but you can't rip or warp people if they have shields or armor. That's true, but here's the catch. If you push somebody, they always get affected by it. So you can just push people off the map, even if they have full armor and barrier. It's OP as fuck. Like, if you're ever fighting a Krogan and you're next to a cliff, just fucking throw him off. Like, it's the only way you're gonna beat that OP motherfucker on hardcore difficulty.
I mean, how many people haven't we killed in SWTOR by just pushing them off the cliffs?
True. And Warhammer was the
That's,
same for me. Warhammer Online, I
yeah.
literally would just run. Like, this was every scenario experience for me in Warhammer. True story. Map loads up. What map is it? Okay, I'm gonna run to the choke point, and I'll run to this place that I know I can knock people into the lava
Uh,
because it was just so much fun to see them jumping around. So when you got knocked into the lava in Warhammer, guys, if you didn't play it, you got super slowed, and you would take insane amounts of damage. I'm talking about like every tick would be like probably a fifth of your HP, so you die quick. So literally, if you were in the lava, you were dead. So you would see people like slow jumping, like
Desperation.
yeah.
But yeah, and that's the fun stuff and the silliness that you also need in your games. You need a good
That's
Like
a good point.
talked about
I love that
good
game for that.
storyline.
Yeah, Warhammer does a good job of that. Now that you mention it, Warhammer as a series is this good mixture of being goofy and fun and serious. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think it's a bit too much for me, as we've talked about in private. Like, Warhammer gets a bit too goofy for me in the 40k versions. When I see orcs fucking, flying around in
Yeah,
spacesuits and stuff, I'm just like, alrighty, I think I'm good on all that. But the fantasy stuff for me was very like fun, but also serious. At least compared to WoW. WoW is a lot less serious to me than Warhammer is as a franchise.
yeah, but that's also by design because they wanted WoW. WoW has been designed to be just very appealing to a broad range of people. I mean, the whole art style, the color palettes, and everything that was being used was there for that. And I mean, there's also like, let's be honest, there's a big reason they added in the Blood Elves for the Horde faction at some point as well, is just to give an even more like approachable side to the Horde for a lot of people to play.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm actually gonna go ahead and stop the stream here, but I wanted to respond to some of these comments real quick. Where somebody said the final boss and the last ME3 DLC, was it called Citadel? I forgot. Was both a real pain and real fun as a Vanguard. Fluffmaster says Vanguard. And Robust said something that I wanted to respond to, which is the first game as the Adept was silly. If you had a team with Liara and Kaden, you just walked into the room and everyone was floating. So to even exaggerate it more, remember whenever you fought Liara's mom, the matriarch? Did you know that you could make her fall off the map? You could kill her like by pushing her off the map. Trust me. And if not, you would just push her into the railings if she would get stuck and just keep shooting her in the head. And then push her into the railing, then just keep shooting her into the head. Like the powers in that game, which I mean it kind of makes sense, but they are so OP. Like they are so OP. And I think that makes that game so much fun.
Yeah, I mean, you can't do that because it's a single player game. Like,
True.
if you don't have to worry about multiplayer stuff, you just go a bit silly more. It's like it's fine.
Yeah, but that's pretty much it, guys. New World is unfortunately probably not gonna last that much longer. If it is,
Yeah.
it's in a worse state than it's ever been before. But worse than that, Amazon Game Studios looks like they're done. And they were working on like 2 new projects. So,
Yeah, Lord of the Rings
mhm.
and something else.
Yeah, I can't remember the other one. So that means that like we lost 2 like new potential games. But to be honest, they didn't really seem like they were learning from their lessons that much. And again,
No.
if these companies aren't gonna like admit stuff, you don't owe them any loyalty. At that point, you're just treating them like a straight up business. Like if they don't give you proper value, you don't interact with them.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
go ahead.
you always have to understand that your relationship with any game publisher studio is always going to be the case. You're a customer, they're the business. And you should only give money to a business that is giving you a proper product and proper support.
Yeah, and if you only want to give money to virtual worlds that, put more effort into developing community, I think that that's perfectly fine because that makes
Yeah.
sense. I think that's being respectful of your time and wanting the developers to at least take it a little bit seriously, which I respect RuneScape for, with how their community handles changes and stuff like that, or it's voted on. Um, though people always complain because they'll vote on something, then people after will be like, "Why do we vote on this shit? I hate this shit." Which is, you can never make anybody totally happy, but um,
No. That's a hopeless endeavor.
but yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the discussion surrounding New World and Amazon. And hopefully the next discussions aren't nearly as depressing. I don't have any much more to add to the discussion now, and I need to actually go finish writing Killing Floor and do my voiceover today. So I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and I'll let Card say goodbye as well.
Yeah. Thanks for all of the listen, and let's hope that we get some better news in virtual world land. But yeah, don't see a lot of hopeful on the horizon for the moment. But we keep up, and if we find good games, support them. and just above all, have fun.
Totally agreed. All right, everybody. See you guys later.